thank you for all coming to listen to me. Hopefully I can impart some knowledge on kind of the projects I've been working on. For those who don't know me, my name's David. I've been working on a browser automation framework called Selenium for at least 7 years, as I'm kind of been committing directly to the repository for about 6, and am now one of the project leads, kind of moving the direction. But what I want to kind of do for everyone today is kind of show you where we've been as a project, where we are right now, and where we're going in the future, because things are always changing. For those who've kind of been working in the industry for many, many years, you can kind of see how things have changed. Like, 15 years ago, there was only really one browser that was out there. And then just after that, they disbanded that browser. And this was a thing, at that stage, it was what was commonly known as the browser wars. So we had all these different browsers trying to compete in the late 90s. And they were all doing fairly bad jobs at what they were trying to do. So we had like Internet Explorer. Microsoft had a really clever idea in that what they'll do is they'll bundle a browser and then they'll just take over the market. They'd kind of seen the same thing happen with Windows. So like, if we sell computers with the operating system installed, people will never change it. They will just stay with it, and they'll go with it. But then we had kind of the other companies try to go, well, we don't really like this, and we want people to have choice and things like that. So we can kind of see the Netscapes appeared, Opera appeared. They started fighting each other, trying to create this really weird and wonderful battlefield, because it was like trying to do new technological advances. But what essentially happened was that we saw one of them as a company just pretty much fold. So Netscape was just hemorrhaging money, and AOL went and bought them and tried to use them, but then didn't do a really good job of it, because AOL just kind of, essentially, in my opinion, they just wasted the money. Opera then decided that they were going to sue Microsoft and go, well, we want to force people to have choice. It didn't really work out as they wanted. They won the court case, but people weren't always choosing their products. But at least they got people to have choices. And this is kind of the battlefield that came out of the browser wars. We can kind of see like all these things. And we had Internet Explorer still being there, because between Internet Explorer 6 and Internet Explorer 7, there was a 5-year gap. And like in today's terms, where Firefox and Chrome are releasing every 6 weeks, 5 years is a very long time, like, for new things to happen. But as a tester, life was easy, because your market has only got 99, like the browser's only got 99% of the market, so pretty much everyone's using it. If I want to test software, I just need to test it on one platform, one browser, and away I go. It's easy. So like this is a little formula that I kind of made up to prove it. To be like, where B is the number of browsers, T is the number of tests, and P is the platform. So we got one browser, say 100 tests, and one platform. So at worst, you only had to do 100 tests every time you wanted to release a website. That's easy. Like, if you compare it to what we have to do nowadays. And we're also in a stage where like there wasn't that much Ajax, because Ajax really only came into being used a lot in 2004. So before that, pages were static. They would just kind of send off to a server and come back. And life was so much easier. Well, so we thought. And then part of like all of this after Netscape died, another project decided that they were going to release a browser, a project called Phoenix. So for those who don't know, Phoenix was the first version of Firefox that was released. The meaning is out of the ashes of Netscape came a new product, and Phoenix was released. That was essentially Firefox 1. And then they kind of changed their name to Firefox later on. But we had this really nice project. And then, and it started getting traction. It got traction very quickly because people believed in it. They believed, and it had a very good, the tech community just rallied behind it. People started using it. Consultants, they were given their laptops when they were kind of traveling the world, and they were like, I don't want to use Internet Explorer anymore because there's this really cool product over here, and it's got all these really cool features, because it was like they came out with tabbed browsing. It was one of the first to come out with it. You couldn't do that in Internet Explorer. They're like, wow, we need this. So people started switching to it. But now if we go back to my formula, we have now 2 browsers, 100 tests. We're going to stick for simplicity. We'll stick with one platform. So now we suddenly got 200 tests to do it, and we've all been doing testing for quite some time. If we have to do more tests, how often do we actually get more time to run the same, the more tests? Rarely. It just hardly ever happens. Managers go, well, especially project managers, like, well, we've got all these extra things, but the project still needs to be delivered by this point. So QAs would do this. They would just kind of hammer at the keyboard or whatever, just kind of blow through it. And this would happen daily or whatever, and people would just get really upset. And in reality, they would find one bug. One bug led to hundreds of bugs, and you would just and you would essentially run around and kind of pull your hair out. But because you've now got these 2 browsers doing these 2 different things, what used to happen, because this was back before people were using continuous integration a lot, is that you would fix the problem in one browser, and it would break another in the other browser, because there was no standards. Like Microsoft weren't developing their browser. They were ignoring the W3C, the standards body. They were just doing what they wanted. And you would flip-flop between these 2 things. So there was a developer called Jason Huggins. He was getting really bored of this because he was working on an internal project and he wanted to test it. And he wanted to do it properly. And he created Selenium. Kind of, for us testers, it was kind of, we're in heaven now because we can just see it working and it's working well. I'm not going to go into the technological choices he's made because some of them are a bit silly, but this was awesome. It was our great leap forward in testing. We kind of got to see all these really cool features, could test them. Developers could start testing them. They could start writing their own tests. And we could kind of then concentrate on the harder problems, because that, as testers, ideally we might use automation to find the easy problems, and then kind of the testers come in and find all the hard problems and then help developers solve those problems. And we had our kind of robots that we could set up, and we started doing it. And we started building out infrastructure and tests and tons of tests, and they would run, and sometimes they run for hours. But at least they're running, obviously they must be creating some value. So the community started growing around it. We started getting tools like the IDE, the Firefox add-on that allows you to record and replay. Personally, I think that was one of the worst products to come out of the Selenium project, but people use it, and they use it a lot, and they're quite happy with it. As long as they're doing some form of testing, it's better than nothing. The remote control, which allowed you to put your tests on any server or any machine and speak to it and drive browsers. So like, I could be on, say, this Windows machine, I could speak to that my Mac, and vice versa, which is always good. And then obviously, like, as the platform started growing, so kind of, you know, back to my formula of browsers times tests times platforms, the grid was created so that you can kind of just parallelize everything. Because the grid would just take care of the multiplexing of how data got routed around, and it would find the right place and just run tests. And it was amazing. You know, people could do all these really cool things. So I'm going to kind of show you an example of what this type of code used to do. So that, can everyone see that code? If you can't, it's right. I'm going to put it into command prompt. But essentially, it's just a little bit of code that goes, I want to Selenium, and I wanted to start a browser and stop it. Oh, I fixed it. One of the interesting things when I was doing this was, for a while, I'd put Chrome there, and I kind of showed this test to some people, and they were like, "Why have you got Chrome there?" An interesting bit of information is Chrome, in the Selenium sense, is speaking about a different version of Firefox, an internal version that comes out. Google Chrome then came out with their product called Chrome. From the Selenium point of view, it was really annoying because now we're like, but everyone knows what Chrome is, and now they're trying to use Google Chrome. What do we do? But yeah, it's a bit of a tangent, and it was fairly annoying from a testing Selenium point of view. But so I moved it back to Firefox anyway. I should copy that. Let's try that. Somewhere. Somewhere over there. Sorry. So like it used to do this really weird thing of the like opening up multiple browsers to do stuff. It do like but the nice thing is you can kind of see the commands in the top right, and it worked okay. And this is down to technology choices that they made. But in essence, it was always limited. Like you could never do anything special. You couldn't break out of the sandbox. You couldn't draw pictures on a canvas or things like that. You had to always be reliant on this. So I'm just gonna. So our robot became very rusty very quickly over the years. But it served us really well. So, you know, we can't complain too loudly. And now we're kind of in the present day. Because we knew the technology was becoming rusty, it wasn't coping with what we were trying to do, it was just being a bit useless in certain cases. The web was moving faster, much quicker than any of the open source project could maintain, and we needed to make choices to be able to do things. And some of those choices meant that we kind of needed to think of, Is there anything else that we can kind of solve around it? So Jason Huggins and Simon Stewart decided that they were going to have a talk and they were going to compare their two automation frameworks together. I'm just going to, since I should have internet. So they happily say that they own the or the top search for, if you search steel cage knife fight, comes down to two browser automation frameworks fighting. So they got together, pulled out their knives, and kind of showed off what they're going to do. And they kind of showed all the strengths of one and the strengths of the other, the weaknesses of it. But the interesting thing that they both noticed is that the strength of one project was the weakness of the other project. So like Selenium was really good. If a new browser came onto the market, it would work instantly. WebDriver couldn't do that. You needed to do all this extra work. You needed to kind of get things involved. And they solved it, and like they decided, we're going to merge the two projects, and they merged it, and like we're at what we are today. We have like WebDriver gave us some like one of the nice things it gave us is that it gave us proper programming techniques that we could use, like object orientation. Like a lot of people take it for granted, but object orientation is really good. So I'll just kind of go. Oh. In this example, like if you ever want to speak to a developer and he's telling him he's doing it wrong, and he's created an API, if you only ever have one object over here, like the SEL dot, it's called a God API design, because that one object is now God and everything hangs off it. And that's really bad because you semantically you don't want that. So we have object orientation. Now we could do things like something on the page. I could now have an object that represents that, and I could share it around, and people could use it. And this is really nice. There are certain things in the original Selenium where like you might be writing something in Python or C#, but a lot of the techniques you're having to apply are coming from Java, because a lot of work was done in Java and people didn't like that. But so now we could do things in a proper programming language and in the language that people were comfortable in, and they could do things really nicely. And how many people in here kind of do some form of programming? Like automation is a form of programming, so if you do any automation, you can put your hand up. One of the things that people used to get upset with is you would always have to start this Java server to do something with Selenium. And they're like, well, I write Python, I don't want Java. Java's rubbish. Java is rubbish, but that's a different argument. Like, I write Ruby, I don't want Java. I write .NET, I definitely don't want Java on my Windows machine. And installing Java on a Windows machine is always painful. So they're like, I don't want that. And now we could kind of start using techniques where we can go, I'm going to directly bind to a browser and use it. And people are like, what? You're just going to speak to the browser? Yep, we're going to do something like that. It's going to be interesting. But it means we don't need this kind of extra layer. We don't need to speak to Java server. We might want to do that if we want to kind of communicate across machines and things like that. But for the most part, we're just going to do what I like to call type binding. So you can just speak to the browser, and away you go. And everyone was happy. Finally, everyone had their belief of where we were going. And we started supporting modern browsers. I thought I'd fix that slide. Opera was there as well. I don't know why I removed it. Yeah, well, this is it is still supported for the Presto, and it is supported for Android. But anyway, so like we had support for the modern browsers. We can kind of use them, we can scale out. And you know, when I was saying, you know, like the formula of browser times test times platform is that we kind of got 4 times the amount of tests times at least 3 platforms now. So you know, the amount of tests that need to be run is growing exponentially, type of thing, because you're always just going to be growing, and it's never a good. Like ideally, it's never a good thing because your automation should just check that the things are right, and your testing should be kind of solving your bigger problems. So from a language point of view, this is just some Python that I wrote. I'll kind of show you it working in a minute. But like for people like the way it was initially designed was to make sure that if a business person wanted to have a look at it and understand it, they could, because you know they can understand what find elements mean. They can go, well, I need to find something on the page. That's easy enough. And I know it's going to be stored in something. I don't understand what it's going to be stored in, but I know it's going to be stored in something. And you can kind of show what, like, say, the text is and things like that. So now, you know, instead of having that really weird, like, 2 browser thing that we have 1, and it loaded. Like, I purposely left the Java server running over here. So I'm just going to kill that, and what we should still see is the browser still up. We still kind of have this control, and this is where the type binding and really cool things that we can now do to it. And I'm going to okay, you're not going to work. So, and now we can kind of, you know, I can collect stuff, I can see what the text is, you know, people are happy. But the real cool parts when it comes to what we can do is now we can actually start doing proper user mimicking. So in this example, I've got a canvas, I'm going to draw a picture on it. So one of our use cases, so for those who don't know, I work for Mozilla, and we had a project where we were kind of trying to get people's signatures to kind of say that they wanted to be part of the open web and things like that. From a testing point of view, it's like, well, we need certain amounts of test coverage. How are we going to actually do it, like a signature? How can we kind of make sure the signature is going into the system? Because it's just a canvas. Like, we need to test these things. And we couldn't do it like in pure unit tests or anything. So we kind of went, oh well, we've got to try to do all this other stuff. Sorry. Bless you. Oh. So ideally, we're going to change to a different page. So Sorry, it's a big screen because I'm looking back. Pretty much up to here is a canvas that we can now draw in. What? Oh, examples. Dear. I'm just going to kind of do hold music while I sort this out. So, sorry. And oh, that's why. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, I did it underneath. So now we can. So now we can kind of do really cool things, like and we can kind of see with the action chains, we can actually do proper user mimicry. Like I want to hold something, I want to type something while my shift key is down, or I want to do all these other things, where we could never do that in the past. And we've also got these really cool features, like if I look for an element and it's not hidden, or if it is hidden, and I try to use it, as a user, the user wouldn't be able to touch it, so neither should your test automation. Like this is really key factors that have never been considered enough in some of the other projects that did test automation. So yeah. So we know where the past is. We know where we are right now. Now we need to really start considering the future. And the future, at least as it stands now, is probably just mobile. But I think there's going to be other things that are going to come along because we've got interesting wearable projects that are coming out. So like glasses that people might want to view their websites in. It has to work. They might want to do things with their eyes. They want to do things. So we've got to kind of start thinking about a project that can handle these things. And because but the wars, because we've been thinking about this and we've realized war is pointless. Like we need to kind of collaborate. Like the war's taken so much out of us that we have to eat food sitting on the floor on the street, but we do it. We're working together to kind of see where we can go. Fortunately, it's not the most diverse group, but we try. And this group here is the current W3C working group for WebDriver. So one of my jobs at Mozilla is to take all the work that we're doing from this and from the WebDriver project and build it directly into Firefox. We've already seen it with Opera. They did it initially. The Google Chrome team have done it. My team that I manage, we're doing it at the moment. And so is the Microsoft's Edge team. So Edge is their new browser that's coming out in Windows 10, which gets rid of a lot of extra rubbish that they'd left in there for backwards compatibility, and which was holding Microsoft back from implementing some of the really cool features of the web. Like we've got a person here from Microsoft, we've got Googlers, some of my team sat at the end there. So we're kind of doing some really cool things. And we're always kind of building on it. And we kind of want to see where we can go. And like I say, mobile is most definitely the future. So I kind of skipped ahead, but yeah, we've got Opera who are doing things. They originally released a version for Presto. Presto is the browser rendering engine that they had. They now are Chromium based. So they've released that, but they've also got a version that works for Android. So if you have an Android device and you have Opera on it, you can speak using WebDriver straight into Opera and control it, which is really cool. Chrome works against the desktop devices and mobile devices, which is quite nice. Then these are the people who kind of are still developing it. Microsoft, they have committed to it. They are working on it. The lead developer tweeted it again the other day from Build, and then they had a Edge like developer day in Mountain View, and they kind of all supported it. I know my company's supporting it because they've kind of given me the mandate to make it. And we're making sure that we can run against desktop, Android devices, Firefox OS. We might, in the future, also see about Firefox for iOS. That's one of the projects that's being developed at the moment, which is kind of like Chrome. But with the Chrome on iOS, you can't automate that at the moment through WebDriver. Well, you can, and this is where I'm kind of show my next bit. Oh, that demo's not going to work. Sorry, it broke, and I still can't get it to work. I was going to show you kind of how we do things against Firefox OS. So we put all our testing for that is done, or not all of it. Most of our testing for it is done through emulators up in EC2, and we kind of just easily scale out horizontally, so we can run tests so quickly. Like one of the projects, because we've got a new like CI system that we're developing, and we're starting to see tests coming back in 10 minutes where they were taking hours, because we could easily just break the tests, programmatically break them up, and run them in parallel. So we could get some feedback, but that only kind of tells you that the functionality is right, so it doesn't actually tell you that the thing's not broken. So there's a fundamental difference between the two. And we're now getting to place tools like Selendroid, iOS Driver, Appium. They're now pretty much battle hardened. So the first two are the two I personally prefer to use. They were developed by the same team at eBay, by Dominique Darry and Francois Renaud, and they've done a really good job of it. They've kept all the WebDriver semantics and how it all works. Appium kind of, in certain cases, will use either of the previous projects where they couldn't get holds into the into say iOS or into Android. and they kind of do the same thing, and kind of people are putting this out onto their like grid-like systems for their testing. So you can do really cool things. So I'm going to show you an example of Selendroid working. And what all it's really going to do is it's going to kind of load up a native application. So this is not web-based. Like this is one of the key things I need to make sure everyone understands. It's not the web. I'd prefer it to be the web, but it's not going to be the web that I'm going to show you here. And then we're going to kind of show that it's actually being able to type. And this is where one of the new products that we need to get, and we need to also start kind of thinking about future frameworks to be able to do the same. Sorry, I keep losing my mouse by looking back. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get up and running. Oh, there we are. The demo gods are definitely not with me today. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry, the screen is. It's probably the biggest Android I've ever seen. Oh, it was there for a second. So now we can we're typing into native applications. And like I was saying earlier, like this is only the technology we have now. We kind of need to start thinking about the way we want to structure our applications in the future to be able to do really cool things like this. Where one of the things that I'm trying to do with other companies is try have a standard way of communicating to applications so that we can automate it, so that you, as like the people in here who do automation, can do things really well, and can kind of have confidence in it, because people who like high quality applications always mean that there's going to be people using them. Like you see it a lot on Google Play. If something's rubbish, it'll have no stars and no one will be downloading it. So yeah. And that's it from me. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you kind of learned something or enjoyed the demos at least. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions to David? Okay, Alex.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm new to Canvas controlling, so I would like to know if I implement something, I do my own canvas with specific actions, like buttons within the canvas that do some things.
Mm-hmm.
Can I control this? Can I expose the actions and control this from Selenium?
Yes. One of my colleagues, Dave Hunt, he did a really interesting talk once where him and a friend collaborated on how could they automate automate Canvas games. So their example was helicopter. They had a helicopter game, and I don't know if you know helicopter. It's a game where you kind of the background's always moving. You've got this helicopter, and what you need to do is just kind of make sure it stays up. So you got to press buttons. You need to release it. You need to know all these things, and it gets really interesting. And he did a really good talk. It's up on YouTube. But essentially, the techniques you need to do are we've given you the tools like how to do the user mimicry from Selenium. One of the other things you can do from Selenium is that you can inject JavaScript into the page to get information back from the page. So you need to specifically build your application for automation. So you need to have the hooks, but the hooks aren't necessarily bad hooks, because all you're doing is I need access to this object, like what state are you in right now, and it gives it back to you. So you kind of you're doing things like that, and then you kind of need to it's mainly down to the hooks. Like you need to just see where the application's going. Like you're going down, but in helicopter, the tunnel that you're flying through gets smaller and smaller. So, but you always need to kind of know that you're not near the top and you're not near the bottom, because you need to apply a certain amount of pressure to keep you at a certain height. And he was constantly just looping around trying to find that, and then kind of going, oh, I need to release, I need to press, I need to release, I need to press, and then so they stripped the game back and then started adding things to make it harder and harder for kind of the system to be purely, it's just going like that. Because then sometimes you might have something sticking up, so you need to go over it and then down and things like that. But he's done a really good talk. It was from Selenium conference 2011. So if you just look on YouTube, so Dave Hunt and Andy, I'm really bad with names.
Dave Hunt is good enough, thank you.
Yeah, Dave Hunt will be able to do it.
Thank
Dave
you.
Hunt, cool.
Anyone else would like to ask David? Okay.
Okay, so can you elaborate more on, you think future is mobile, and I totally agree. Would be like web on mobile or a native mobile, data driven by web, or what?
My personal opinion?
Yeah, your personal opinion, that's totally your opinion.
Yeah, so my personal opinion is, so the way the market's going is that you got these vertical silos. So like if you have your Gmail and you go for an Android device, you kind of do everything. You kind of got your Android vertical, or your Google vertical. You got Apple, you got iCloud, you got this, and you got the things, and you got your Mac. You want to develop for it, and all that. And then you got like BlackBerry and all these. The one common thing between all of them, because none of them share the same like platform code, they don't share. So like if you build it for one platform, you have to kind of then rebuild it for another platform and rebuild it, and it gets a bit silly. So my belief is and they're all kind of closed technologies. Like, yes, Android is, I call it public source because it's not open source in the true sense, because you can't contribute to it. You can look at the code, so it's public, but you can't contribute to it, so I don't see that as open source. I call that public source. Richard Stallman will kind of tell me I'm wrong, but I think he's wrong. And
You're totally right.
yeah, so but you got these things, and you can't contribute, you can't see these things. But the one thing you could always control in any of those different platforms is a web page. Like, you know, you can always do these things. And this is where, like, I have great belief in the direction that Firefox OS is going, and where WebOS was, and like Chrome OS and all those. I have great belief in what they're doing, because I think open technologies and standardized open technologies, so things for the web, will eventually kind of be the mainstay of everything. So, because you know, if you want to develop an application, you're just like, well, how do you do that? Oh, view source. Oh, I see how they're doing it. I'm learning. I can contribute, and I can kind of drive technology forward. But you can't do that on closed technologies, and that's like a big failing in my opinion. Like, it's good for those companies who have those product verticals, but for kind of the way the technology is going in the future, I think it's a big hindrance and will slow us down where we can kind of shoot ahead right now. Because we are, in my opinion, we're in the golden age of kind of the web and technology. Like, we're only at the real start of it. We're going to see huge growth soon, like in the next 10 years. Like, you know, as wearables come in and things like that, people are like, oh, you know, I want to write some JavaScript that can kind of speak to my Arduino. And you can do that now, but you know, but it's fundamentally a web technology that someone went, oh, I want to speak to my Arduino. I know this language. I don't want to learn C. C is rubbish. Like, I just want to learn JavaScript. It's well, it's not easy, but it's easier. And they do it, and they do all these things. And I think we're going to do it. Like, WebRTC is another great example of, like, Skype was really good at doing video conferencing, and there's other companies. But with WebRTC, it's being built into the browser, so now you don't need to pay this. Like, you don't need to pay Microsoft to use Skype if you want to do multiple things. You go, oh, this WebRTC. Video games, because like the amount of graphics that are being put, graphics support are being put into browsers, so you can kind of do WebGL and things like that. You don't really need the native going forward. Like, at the moment, the web might not be fast enough, but it's getting there very quickly.
Okay, thank you. More questions? Okay, so then, David, thank you again for the presentation.